The call came while I was eating a soggy microwave dinner, my mind stuck on the pile of unpaid bills spread across my tiny kitchen table. I almost let it go to voicemail but decided to answer, hoping for some good news about a job offer I'd applied for last week. Instead, it was my bank's fraud department. "Mr. Ethan Carter, we've noticed a suspicious charge on your credit card, $15,000 to Global Lux Travel Agency. Did you authorize this transaction?" My fork clattered onto the table. "What? No. Cancel it. Unfortunately, the charge has already been processed. You'll need to file a dispute." Panic settled in like a heavy weight on my chest. $15,000. That was nearly double what I made in a month. After the call ended, I sat there frozen, staring at the bank app on my phone, the obscene charge glaring back at me. Whoever did this had destroyed me financially with one swipe. Then a chilling thought struck me. The only people who had access to my financial details were my parents. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through past conversations with them. Nothing unusual, mostly brief texts about holidays and family updates. We hadn't been close for years, ever since I moved across the country to escape being the family's unwanted second son. My younger sister Madison, the golden child, always came first. My phone buzzed with a new notification, an Instagram post from Madison. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There she was, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower in a designer dress. Captioned, "Dreams really do come true. Europe Tour 2024 starts now. Tokyo Tower dizzy #blessed #family first." My heart stopped. They wouldn't. I immediately called my parents. My mother answered on the third ring, her voice overly cheerful. "Ethan, sweetheart, how are you? Did you book a Europe trip using my credit card?" My voice shook with barely contained rage. The silence on the other end lasted too long. Then came the weak excuse. "It's not what you think. We meant to tell you." "Tell me what? That you stole from me?" My father's voice boomed in the background. "Calm down, Ethan. We were going to pay it back." Madison was going through a tough time after her breakup, and this trip was important for her emotional well-being. I nearly laughed out loud. Her emotional well-being? You put me in debt because she got dumped. You don't understand, my mother said, her voice trembling now. We couldn't let her spiral. You're doing fine. Independent and successful. Successful? I'm drowning in bills while you're living some fantasy life through Madison. My father cut in. You can't report this, Ethan. You'll ruin the family. There it was, their real concern. Not me, not the financial disaster they caused, but how it would look if people found out. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. The next day, I met with a lawyer to explore my options, but the news wasn't good. The bank wouldn't consider it fraud since my parents technically had access to some of my financial information from when they helped me co-sign my first credit card years ago. A mistake I never fixed. I could sue them, but that meant dragging the family name through court, something I wasn't ready for. I needed to breathe, to think. That evening, still fuming, I opened Madison's Instagram again, scrolling through her sickeningly perfect life. Rome, Venice, Barcelona, each picture more extravagant than the last. I hated myself for still caring, for wanting to be included even after everything they'd done. A notification popped up. Madison was live streaming from a luxury hotel in Monaco. Her laughter rang through the speakers as she clinked glasses with someone out of frame. The caption read, "Celebrating life with my amazing family. Couldn't be more thankful. Wine glass dizzy." Something inside me snapped. I needed justice, not just for the money, but for the years of being used, overlooked, and discarded. I contacted a private investigator, laying everything out. He was skeptical at first. Family fraud cases rarely went anywhere, but the mention of a luxury European vacation caught his attention. Within a week, he uncovered the first crack in their perfect facade. My parents were broke. Their house was on the brink of foreclosure, and Madison's glamorous lifestyle was funded entirely by credit cards, many of which were in my name. But there was more. Buried in old financial records, he found something unexpected. 2 passports issued for Madison, one under our family name and another under a different surname. It didn't make sense, until he handed me a sealed envelope with a birth certificate inside. Madison's father wasn't my dad. My world tilted. I read the document again, hoping it was some bureaucratic error. But there it was, clear as day. Madison's real father was listed as someone named Richard Hayes, a name I'd never heard before. For a moment, I considered confronting them immediately, but something stopped me. They'd lied for years. Who was this Richard Hayes? Was he involved in their scheme somehow? I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. Couldn't sleep that night. The name Richard Hayes kept echoing in my mind, tied to everything that felt wrong about my life. Who was he? Why had my parents hidden Madison's real father? The old anger flared up, mixing with something more dangerous. Curiosity. The next morning, I called the private investigator. "Find Richard Hayes," I instructed. "I don't care what it costs." Days passed with no updates, leaving me restless and on edge. Meanwhile, Madison continued flaunting her European adventure online, oblivious to the storm brewing back home. Every post felt like a slap in the face. My parents must have thought they were invincible, or worse, that I was too weak to fight back. But I'd learned something about power. It's not about strength. It's about knowing where to strike. Then the call came. "I found Hayes," the investigator said. "But it's complicated." He explained that Richard Hayes wasn't just some random ex-lover. He was a disgraced investment banker, once powerful, now deeply in debt after a massive corporate fraud scandal. He vanished years ago after declaring bankruptcy, leaving behind a trail of ruined lives. "How's he connected to my family?" I demanded. "Not sure yet, but get this, he resurfaced recently. In Monaco." My blood turned cold. Madison's latest Instagram post flashed in my memory. "Monaco nights with family red heart." A throwaway caption I dismissed as typical social media fluff. Could Hayes have been there the whole time, hiding in plain sight? Fueled by suspicion, I booked a last-minute flight to Europe, spending the last of my savings. It was reckless, desperate, but I needed answers. I landed in Nice, France, and took a train straight to Monaco. The sun-soaked streets felt surreal, like stepping into one of Madison's Instagram stories. Designer shops gleamed with untouchable luxury, mocking me at every corner. I checked into a cheap hostel under a fake name and started digging. The investigator had tracked Richard Hayes to a yacht moored in the Monte Carlo marina. It was registered under a shell company tied to offshore accounts, the same accounts Madison and my parents used to fund their lavish lifestyle. Late that night, I found the yacht, a sleek monstrosity of wealth and arrogance. Its name, Aurora's Whisper, shimmered in silver letters across the stern. No lights were on, but faint music drifted from the upper deck. My hands trembled as I snapped a few photos, proof that Hayes was real, and possibly still working with my family. Just as I turned to leave, a familiar voice cut through the stillness. "Ethan?" I froze. "Madison." She stood at the edge of the dock, barefoot and wrapped in a silk robe, her face a mix of shock and confusion. She looked like she'd walked off a movie set, but there was something strained about her, something wrong. What are you doing here?" she stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. "You first?" I hissed, stepping closer. "Who the hell is Richard Hayes?" Her face paled. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand plenty," I snapped. "You and our parents stole my money, ruined my life, and now I find out your real father is some criminal banker? Were you planning to disappear on that yacht too?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't trust them. Madison had always been a master manipulator. "Please," she whispered. "You have no idea what's really going on. Then explain." Before she could answer, heavy footsteps echoed from the yacht. A tall, broad-shouldered man emerged from the shadows, older, grizzled, with sharp features that mirrored Madison's. Richard Hayes. His cold gaze locked onto me. "Who the hell are you?" I held my ground, fists clenched. "Your worst nightmare." Madison stepped between us, her voice trembling. "Dad, please." Hearing her call him Dad hit like a punch to the gut. The final confirmation I didn't need. Hayes advanced slowly, menace radiating from him. You should leave, kid. This doesn't concern you. I forced a bitter laugh. It concerns me when you and your fake family drain my accounts and vanish like thieves. Madison grabbed my arm, panic flashing in her eyes. You have to go. Now. Before I could react, two burly men appeared behind Hayes. Security guards or worse. Their expressions promised violence. You've seen too much, Hayes sneered. You're done. Suddenly, Madison shoved me backward. Run! The guards lunged, but I was already sprinting down the dock, adrenaline fueling my escape. Behind me, I heard Madison screaming at Hayes, buying me precious seconds. I didn't stop running until I reached the crowded streets of Monaco, breath ragged and heart pounding. Whatever tangled scheme I'd stumbled into went far deeper than I'd thought. They weren't just scamming me. They were running from something much darker. I kept moving through the narrow, winding streets of Monaco, every step fueled by adrenaline and raw anger. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an unknown number. At first, I considered ignoring it, assuming it was spam or worse, someone from Hayes' crew. But instinct urged me to answer. Ethan. Madison's voice was frantic, barely above a whisper. You need to listen to me. They're coming for you. Why should I believe anything you say? I hissed, pressing my back against a cold stone wall, scanning the street for any signs of pursuit. Because I helped you escape, she snapped. You're in way over your head. It's not just about money anymore. I hesitated. Talk. Richard Hayes isn't just my father. He's running an international financial crime ring. Her voice cracked. Our parents got involved years ago, long before you ever left home. They invested everything they had with him, thinking they'd be rich forever. But when his business collapsed, they were stuck. I clenched my fists. So they used me. They had no choice. Her words spilled out in a panicked rush. Hayes promised to help them escape bankruptcy, but only if they worked for him, smuggling assets, laundering money. They're trapped, Ethan. We all are. My head spun. It sounded insane. Something out of a crime thriller. But her trembling voice felt too real to dismiss. You expect me to feel sorry for you? I spat. You chose this. I didn't, she cried. I was just a kid when they dragged me into this. Do you think I wanted any of it? The trips, the fake life. I never even knew the whole truth until it was too late. Before I could respond, I heard faint shouting in the distance. Men barking orders in a language I didn't recognize. My blood ran cold. They were close. Where are you? I demanded. At the old pier, she whispered. Slip 23. There's a boat leaving for Marseille at midnight. Be there, or you're dead. The line went dead. I ran. The streets blurred around me as I made my way toward the docks, dodging through back alleys and deserted courtyards. By the time I reached Slip 23, I was soaked with sweat and gasping for air. The pier was dark and eerily quiet, too quiet. My instincts screamed trap, but I couldn't turn back now. If Madison was telling the truth, she was my only shot at survival. A faint figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette I recognized instantly. Madison. She was clutching a duffel bag, her face pale and drawn. You came, she breathed, relief washing over her. Where's Hayes? I demanded. He doesn't know I'm here, she said quickly. I stole cash from one of his accounts, enough for both of us to disappear. Before I could process her words, the sharp click of a gun echoed through the still night. Smart girl. A cold, familiar voice drawled. Hayes stepped out of the shadows, flanked by his two enforcers, guns trained on us. But not smart enough. Madison stumbled back, dropping the duffel bag. I wasn't going to run. I swear. Hayes sneered. Save it. You've been a liability since the day you were born. His men advanced, guns gleaming under the dim pier lights. My mind raced, searching for a way out, but there was none. Then I saw it. A rusted metal pipe lying half-submerged in the water just behind Madison. Madison, I whispered urgently. The pipe. Her eyes widened in understanding. In one fluid motion, she ducked, grabbed the pipe, and swung it hard against the nearest enforcer's knees. He crumpled with a howl of pain. I lunged for the second man, tackling him before he could fire. We hit the ground in a tangled heap, fists flying. His gun skittered across the pier. Hayes cursed, reaching for his weapon, but Madison was faster. She swung the pipe again, smashing it across his wrist. The gun flew into the dark water with a splash. Panting and bloodied, I scrambled to my feet just as the distant wail of police sirens filled the air. Someone must have heard the commotion. Hayes staggered back, clutching his shattered wrist, hatred blazing in his eyes. This isn't over. Madison met his gaze, fire in hers. Yes, it is. As the flashing red and blue lights drew closer, Hayes turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving his fallen men behind. I didn't chase him, there was no point. The police swarmed the docks moments later, taking the enforcers into custody while Madison and I sat on the cold pier, shaking from exhaustion and shock. For the first time in years we were free. Weeks passed. The authorities launched a massive investigation into Hayes's operations, though he remained at large. Madison and I were placed under protective custody, but neither of us trusted it would last forever. One morning, I found a handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. No signature, just 4 words scrawled in bold ink. "We will find you." I burned the note, heart pounding, but I already knew the truth. Hayes was still out there, and he wasn't done with us yet. But this time I wouldn't be running. I'd be ready. Thank you for watching. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Drop a comment and share your thoughts.